What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we've talked quite a bit about Microsoft's push onto PlayStation with some of their first-party games, and now we have some results yesterday that were released from PSN that shows Microsoft is just getting started with this initiative, and we're going to go over that here today. Also, we are going to be going over an anniversary with Nintendo, but not really one that you would be celebrating, more that one that would put things into perspective and you'd probably somewhat mourn. And then we're also going to be talking about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, as we had a whole slew of new details that is making October look really, really exciting. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with PlayStation and an update for the PS5 console that involves Discord. This we can see posted up over on PlayStation blog, where they say, today, we're pleased to share that we're starting to roll out the ability for PS5 players to join Discord voice chat directly from PS5 console, without relying on the Discord PC or mobile apps to initiate the connection. Before, you would have to use your cell phone, for example, to get the connection started, and then the PS5 would take over from there. In this case, they show off a screenshot that has Discord directly in the UI and makes it so you can just do these direct voice chats very, very easily. So that's something. The thing is odd about this, that's something that has been with Xbox for a little while now, and Sony directly invested in Discord, so it's odd that it's taken this long to get integrated into PlayStation, but nonetheless, it's there, and it's just another option, obviously, for people who would like to use Discord over just the native chat or voice rooms that you can set up on PS5, especially if you're doing crossplay maybe with PC, since that is something that Sony is pushing more and more now with their live service games. Discord obviously is something that people are going to be leveraging. Also, we know Square Enix has been going through quite a bit of restructuring internally when it comes to their different projects, and there are concerns around certain rumored titles that maybe they were canceled or shelved. One is Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered. That's been out there through different rumors. One from apparently Midori, who went through a whole thing the other day where it turns out they're not who they said they were. It ended up being a guy from the US, which, hey, going back to the 2000s, that whole thing online, it's pretty common actually. But in this case, it appears Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered is still on. We can see this posted up by VGC. This is actually from the subreddit Gaming Leaks, and what they were doing was going back and forth about Midori, and they finally said, we got a Final Fantasy Tactics Remastered mention from a high-tier leaker, and then a week later there is a chance the leaker is not as credible. The torture never ends. However, Jason Schreier decided to respond here for some reason, saying, hi, the Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster is real and happening. So that's good news, obviously, to have Final Fantasy Tactics get that remaster, because that's a game that is just really good. It's a classic tactic style game, and it's one that obviously a newer generation that's come in has no idea about and really doesn't have great access to. So this makes a ton of sense for Square to pursue and get out there on as many platforms as possible, and I hope they're able to do that sooner rather than later. But we're already halfway through the year. I'm thinking maybe next year we see this game come out. Oh, and sticking with Square Enix here for a moment, all the Kingdom Hearts games are now on Steam. This happened yesterday, and it's just a quick press release they put out so you can take a look at all the different titles and where they're included to make this a bit easier on you. Kingdom Hearts HD 1.5 plus 2.5 Remix, Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue, Kingdom Hearts 3 plus Remind, the DLC, and then we have the Kingdom Hearts Interim Masterpiece. That's everything. So you just buy all of it all at once. And right now over on Steam, some of these games are just 30% off or more. For example, the HD 1.5 plus 2.5 Remix, 31% off at $35. Or you can get the entire Masterpiece 31% off at $68.99. They were just 1 penny off there. But I mean, yeah, awesome games. I'm curious how it runs on the Steam Deck, and maybe that's something I'll check out down the road. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft on PlayStation. We know they've been pushing several titles to the platform, which includes things like Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, and Sea of Thieves, which, when Sea of Thieves went up for pre-order on the PlayStation Store, immediately jumped to the top of all the charts with just the pre-orders, and people seemed very, very excited about this game. The thing that's interesting about Sea of Thieves is I feel like it's a popular game that it seems like it flies under the radar. I don't see a lot of people necessarily in the, I don't know, just the hardcore community, I guess you could call it, talking extensively about Sea of Thieves. This kind of feels like one that maybe has caught on with the mainstream, and that's why it ends up at the top of all of these different charts. In fact, Sony, over on their PlayStation blog, put out a list of the top downloaded games for May. Now, Sea of Thieves came out in April, so this would be the second month, right, that it released? Well, take a look at the charts here. That's right, Sea of Thieves for the PS5 is #1 in both US, Canada, and in the EU. That's really impressive because then you look at the games that it's over. In the US, that includes Madden, Call of Duty, Helldivers 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, which just won't go away, NBA 2K24, MLB The Show 24, Stellar Blade, Fallout 4. I mean, the list goes on here, but these are all big-time releases, some of which are staples in that live service sector, and Sea of Thieves is just #1 in its second month. In fact, if you look over in the EU, we have Sea of Thieves over Grand Theft Auto 5, F1 24, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Helldivers 2, Call of Duty, Topspin, Fallout, and I mean, again, it's really impressive stuff. Even Among Us is below us, which I feel like that was constantly being played and downloaded and purchased at its cheaper price point. But this is interesting because it does make you wonder about Microsoft's just overall push to not only PlayStation, but other platforms. Like, clearly they are seeing the results that they were hoping for, and probably then some, with Sea of Thieves making the move to PlayStation. And I'm sure they're now wondering, well, could we get Sea of Thieves on Nintendo's next system? That would be an impressive launch game for the system, or just a game that comes out in that first year. We saw all kinds of titles on the Switch that came out in that first year do incredibly well, and part of that is because there are a lot of people who just fell out of favor with Nintendo after the Wii U, so I don't want to say it was sparse from third parties, but it certainly wasn't crowded. This time it probably will be, but I feel like Sea of Thieves, just because it's such a different kind of game, will still stand out. And yeah, I would be shocked if Microsoft didn't move heavily, or development heavily, to get this game ready for Nintendo's next system. But then you start to look around and wonder about other Microsoft properties that could just go to PlayStation. And I'm telling you, it's going to be weird if it happens, but I kind of feel like Halo would get a bit of a shot in the arm if it went to PlayStation as well. It's a known quantity, it's a known IP, it's one that I feel like, in terms of just its notoriety, above Sea of Thieves. Not necessarily popularity at this point, because Sea of Thieves is just very popular on PC, especially in like the social side of things on Twitch. It's a social game, obviously, where people are trying to navigate a large pirate ship and find treasure and complete different stories that way. But it certainly latched onto that social aspect, and then it brings all these different platforms together. So it's interesting to consider, though, that Microsoft kind of is taking over PlayStation right now when it comes to multiplayer live service games. Think about it, Call of Duty is constantly up there, and yes, that is Microsoft's now. Minecraft is up there, right? We see Sea of Thieves, and it seems like if they keep making these kind of moves where they do port these live service games over, they very well could be looking at these charts and constantly seeing them take up 4 or 5 slots in the top 10 every single month, and that is going to have Sony, I feel like, a little concerned about that one, because it's like, oh, wow, okay, Microsoft is able to sell games better on our platform, and they have a longer tail with microtransactions. Not really something Sony wants to see after announcing they were going to have, what, like 12 or something live service games. Next up, let's talk about an anniversary that happened yesterday with Nintendo, and it's not exactly a good anniversary. It's not one to get all excited about and celebrate, because it just reminds us how long it's been since E3 2017 happened, which, if you remember, was when Metroid Prime 4 was announced. Here's the trailer for it, where we have the nice JPEG of Metroid Prime 4's logo saying it's now in development. And remember, this was June 13th, 2017. As of yesterday, 7 years have passed, and this is all we have for the game. Well, not quite, I guess. We do have another video, and that one happened more than 5 years ago. Remember the development update on Metroid Prime 4 for Nintendo Switch, where they told us that they have essentially rebooted development and it's moved to Retro Studio. So yeah, in effect, Retro has been working on this thing for, it's close to 6 years. It's getting there. But this is, I mean, just absolute pain, obviously, for Metroid Prime fans. Although they got Metroid Prime Remastered, which is a good game. But even that took a while from Metroid Prime 4's announcement, and I feel like that would have come out much sooner if Metroid Prime 4 was on track for what they originally had planned here. And I do think this is an important thing to recognize now, because the belief at this time is that a Nintendo Direct could be happening next week. Again, it's going to happen in June. Nintendo's already told us, so you can guess next week or the week after, and you have a 50-50 shot of being correct. But let's say it happens next week. I think all of us at this point are expecting to see Metroid Prime 4, like fully. In fact, I feel like it's coming out this holiday. So we have the buildup, we have the expectations now through the roof for a game that was announced 7 years ago now, and the question becomes, can Retro Studios live up to those kind of expectations and that sort of hype? I think it'll be a little harder because this will be on the current Switch, as we know is aging hardware. We'll say it's using that X1, but Metroid Prime Remastered was a very impressive looking title, and what's to say that they're not also preparing Metroid Prime 4 to be on the next system and take advantage of maybe some of the new hardware upgrades that we're expecting to come from Nvidia. But just wanted to throw that out there. Let me know where you were 7 years ago when this game was announced, because we're just about to the point where Metroid Prime 4, from its announcement to now, you would have been able to go through high school 2 full times, and we still wouldn't have seen gameplay. Next up, let's talk about LEGO Horizon Adventures, which apparently coming out of that Summer Game Fest weekend was one of the most covered games, one of the most requested games, anticipated games even, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that it's a Sony first-party IP on the Switch. It's really a shocking thing still for people to kind of wrap their minds around, and the fact that, yeah, it seems like Sony wanted this thing on the Switch is still confusing everyone. But it is a LEGO game. It's not Horizon Forbidden West, which I think would absolutely blow everyone's mind if Sony moved that, say, to the Switch 2 or something. I don't think we're at that point yet, but things are changing in gaming is what I'll say. In fact, at this point, I guess you could have Aloy in Smash. That's a thing that people keep bringing up, so much so that Kotaku decided to ask some of the developers at Guerrilla just to see what their thoughts were on that. We can see this posted up over on Kotaku, where they say, and finally, does this new partnership mean Aloy might eventually come to the next Super Smash Bros? This is from Tim Simons, I'll say, franchise development lead producer at Guerrilla Games. Says, that'd be nice. If you speak to Nintendo and they want to invite us, let me know. I mean, technically it's there, right? Aloy's been on a game on the Switch. They could collaborate and make that happen. And look, we've seen some shocking reveals for Smash Brothers in the past. I don't know if this would be the most shocking we've ever seen. Joker comes to mind. Cloud obviously comes to mind, those sorts of things. This will be a big one, though, to have a PlayStation character that they created, like from scratch, right? An original IP from PlayStation Studios show up in a Nintendo game. Smash Bros. Kind of has an out because it is sort of that crossover of video game and pop culture, but still a Nintendo and Sony working together. Almost like they are on the, the Zelda movie, sort of. But the other thing is, though, Smash Brothers is kind of uncertain as to its future. We're still trying to figure that out. As the current Smash Brothers Ultimate, I'm not expecting necessarily for them to do another Fighters Pass or continue that. I think that's basically done, right? And they're looking towards the future. Would they work to reboot the franchise? You kind of have to, because if you put out the same kind of Smash Brothers that they've been doing for a while now and they try to compete with Ultimate in that roster, it's just not really likely. It's not possible. So sure, a full reboot, and then maybe they can reevaluate what guest characters they have. Maybe Aloy could be there. Would it be the actual Aloy, or would it be Lego Aloy? That's the real question now. Maybe you could do both, technically. A lot of history that could be made that day, so we'll see at some point when, let's face it, a new Smash Brothers gets announced, if there's a whole Fighters Pass and one of the silhouettes looks just enough like Aloy for all the speculation to happen online. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, as previews did release yesterday, where many people in the press and different people on YouTube were able to go out and actually play this game for roughly 30 minutes or so, and there were full presentations given with extra information. So, for example, this one is over on The Gamer, and they talked quite a bit about their gameplay experience as well as some of those modes. So to start, they noticed that it feels a bit slower than the older Tenkaichi games, and these previews were mostly focused on versus mode, so having, for example, Ring Out be pulled from like the World Tournament stage. People are still unsure if maybe that's just an option that was turned off, but it seems like when you get hit out of bounds, you then just go off to another section of the map, and it kind of plays out in a bit of a cinematic between both areas. You can dash in any direction, so it makes it a bit easier to dodge projectiles, which in Dragon Ball, there's a lot of projectiles, no shortage of that, and it looks really, really cinematic in battle. So clearly, when you have the big beam struggles or these moves, they're really they look like spectacles, right? In real time there. In fact, when you go into sparking mode, even the weather around you will change just to make it really dramatic and impactful. Just sounds like some of these fights will look awesome to just kind of observe. So I hope there's a really cool spectator mode in this where you can play around with camera angles and stuff while people are fighting, or even do replays. You can make it look like it's a whole other like episode of Dragon Ball. Now, speaking of which, there's something called Episode Battle. It's a mode that does let you play through the story of 8 different characters. At this time, we have Goku and Vegeta confirmed to be characters that you'll be able to see their story play out. And of course, there are what-if stories. One in particular was described with Goku passing up the opportunity to partner with Piccolo against Raditz, instead fighting alongside Krillin and Master Roshi. So I'm curious where that exactly goes, because then Goku might live through that fight, and then what happens when Vegeta and Nappa end up there if Goku didn't go to King Kai, a whole thing that could play out. So this is exciting stuff. I do like the idea of the what-if stories. It does make it feel fresh to go through the story, as opposed to playing through the same set of events that we've played through for decades now. So I am really excited for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. It's coming up here October 11th, so not too far out, but this seems to be shaping up to be a really good Dragon Ball game, and calling back to the Tenkaichi series that, well, if you're around growing up with those games coming out, whether it's on the PS2 or the Wii, it was a lot of fun. So I'm really looking forward to this one happening in October. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, with the week of gaming events just about over, do you miss E3? Well, 66% say yes, bring it back. 34% say no, I don't really miss E3 being gone. I agree. I think E3 should come back. Well, I would like E3 to come back. I don't know if it should necessarily, because there's a whole thing apparently putting it together, and it could end up being a massive waste of time for people, as it has been in some cases where they tried to do it and they spent months trying to get it all together and that didn't work, and a lot of time wasted there. But that E3 time of year was special. There was a feeling to it, right? The build up, the excitement, the live stage presence and presentations. Those were really fun, because sure, some were just great, like they put together a good show, others weren't, and then some were just outright awesome because of the bloopers and the funny things that just happened from it being live. So that is the aspect that I miss, because it does feel like some of the magic's been taken away from this like beginning of June time period for gaming, when it was just all eyes on it and a ton of excitement and some really, really cool announcements. Now it's just sort of scattershot, and you have no idea what you're gonna get. I don't think E3 is gonna come back. I just don't know if it's in the cards now, but I wouldn't mind if they figured it out for it to come back. So I guess technically I miss E3 more for like the nostalgia of it all, but really the newer generation coming in now who hasn't experienced that kind of build up in that E3 season probably won't really care much, and here soon enough, you'll have to explain what exactly E3 was to some of the newer audience. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Blade, who says, how come a lot of those code names are based on food? Were the people that came up with them hungry? You know, I feel like a lot of the codename conversations, they're not necessarily the most important part of development, so I kind of think they could be done over dinner. You just order some pizzas to the office, you guys are just kicking around names, or you go out to lunch and you're sitting there and you look over at the row of food on the counter and you go, I think we're gonna name Super Mario Party Buffet. That's just the story for it. I think it's mostly set up as, I know what it is, you know what it is, but if it leaks out on the Epic Game Store, no one else will know what it is, and that's kind of it. So pick something weird, or times probably something right in front of you. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. We're Sea of Thieves topping the download charts on PlayStation 5 last month. Is that surprising to hear? And do you think that means Microsoft's making an even bigger push for more live service games going to PlayStation? And then also, what about Dragon Ball Sparking Zero? Are you going to be picking this one up in October based on these new previews? And Metroid Prime 4, it's now been more than 7 years since its initial announcement. Do you think we're finally set to see it at the next Nintendo Direct? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.